Hello again folks, and welcome to my Hoover appliance clinic. Well, no, it's not really an appliance clinic, but that's what it says on this notice board, and I thought it was quite a nice thing to put on the start of the video, that's all. Today I'm going to have a little chat about the Hoover 375 and its earlier variant, the Hoover 370. This video will be on several parts, so this is part one. It's basically just an introduction to the machine, and later on I shall go through some more repair aspects of it and how to take it apart and how to put it back together again and things to watch out for. So hopefully there will be something of interest in it to the people who collect old Hoovers. So without further ado, I'm going to remove the notice and you'll see what's hiding behind. I'll put that nice lady out of the way. I'll put her at the back there so you can still see her. Makes a change from my ugly mug. I'll pop the notice there. As you can see, I've got a collection of 375s and a 370 on my bench. Now, I do remember the history of these and I remember where they come from. I can even remember the customer's name. A lady I used to go to in Cheltenham to repair her washing machine and vacuum cleaners. She always used to get me to service these old 375s. She had two 375s and one 370. And when I did them, I was always enthusiastic and said what lovely old machines they were and not to get rid of them. Well, one day she came to the shop and announced that they had to move house to a smaller place and they hadn't got room for them. And as I'd always commented how nice they were, she thought I might like them, so naturally I said, oh, thank you very much. And I brought them home and put them in the shed. Well, that was many years ago. I don't know the exact date, but it's probably about 35 years ago. The lady's name was Mrs. Moran, funny enough. Heaven knows why I remember her. She was a very nice lady. Perhaps that's why I remember her. Anyway, she gave me these machines and they've been sat in the shed ever since. Anyway, I thought I'll get them out and have a look at them. Now, what I thought I'd do, the first thing I'm going to do is see if they work. If you've got a machine like this, make sure it's safe, obviously, in the flex and that. Don't just plug it in. The first thing I always do is to check the carbon brushes. Before we get started on the video, I'm just going to give you a little piece of advice. It's quite simple, really. If you're storing old Hoovers, be very careful how you store them. Don't be haphazard like me. I just chucked them in the shed, and a couple of days ago I went in there to try and find the bag for this 375 cleaner to show you, and as I went to remove the box where the bag was in, I saw a pair of legs and a tail go scampering off into the deep depth of the shed, and when I got the box out, this is what I found. A damn mouse has been in there and he's built his nest in that bag, look, and he's completely and utterly destroyed it. He's ripped all the bag up, taken all the material off and made a nest inside it, so he's completely ruined it. I'm really upset because it's a really nice old bag, that was an original bag, and that damn mouse has done that, so I'm really annoyed about that, but what can you do? He's wrecked it. So be careful when you store your Hoover bags, folks. As always, when you're dealing with anything electrical, always make sure that you pull the plug out before you do any work. It's all too easy to forget you've got it plugged in and then electrocute yourself, and electricity can and will kill you. If you're not absolutely sure of what you're doing, don't do it. Seek professional help first. Be very careful with anything electrical. Now we'll get on with the video. I've checked the serial number underneath, and it's actually a 7-digit serial number with no prefix, which means it's definitely pre-war. And checking the number against my records, it was actually made in 1937, so it's quite an early machine. So if you can imagine, that machine is 83 years old. Now the first thing I do before I start work on a machine, if I want to check to see if it's working, and it's easy on these, I'll take the brushes out. I always have a look at the brush first, because you can get a good indication as whether the motor or armature particularly is all in good condition and working by the look of the brushes. So I'm going to take this brush out here and have a look at it. Now look at the brush on there. You can see how shiny and clean that brush is, and that indicates that that armature is good. I'll take the other one out as well on the other side so you can see that one too. Clean and shiny. You see both of those brushes are in nice condition. They're just as they should be. They've worn down a little bit, but only about 1/8 of an inch, and they are lovely and clean and shiny, which indicates if I'm lucky that armature is going to be in pretty good condition. So now I know the brushes are in good condition. That means to me that that machine is most likely going to work. So what I'm going to do, I've got the lead here, I'm going to plug it into my little connector box. So look at that. That machine is 83 years old. It's been stuck in my shed for probably around about 35 years. It's all dusty and dirty and filthy, but it still goes and it still sounds perfectly good. Far better than any modern machine, I can tell you. And that thing will still be going long after most of these plastic things you buy today will have ceased to exist. I mean, if you buy a machine today and you get 5 years out of it, you're doing really, really well. I mean, in my opinion, they're plastic rubbish, and it saddens me how we've gone from this machine, a quality machine, to cheap plastic rubbish. But there you are. End of my my ranting. So having established that this one works, I'm just going to try the others and see if they work. And the easiest way to do it is to pop the handle off. So again, you don't get this on modern machines. With a Hoover machine, you've got a plug on the end of the handle there, a socket rather, and 2 pins, and you can just plug the handle in and take it off. So I'll pop that one out of the way because I know that one works. We'll try the 370, folks. Now this one's really old. This is a pre-war machine, and as you can see, it's basically the same as the 375. It has an oval cover on here, and the back part is slightly different. The 375 has a Bakelite motor unit, whereas the 370 is all metal. But basically it is really the same sort of machine. The parts are interchangeable anyway. So we've got the 370 here, and this is a really old one. Give it a twist. And that feels alright, the bearings feel like. It might be a bit noisy, it won't greasing. I'll pop that back on. I'll check the brushes just to see. That brush is lovely and clean and shiny, so I don't think we'll have a problem with that at all. Almost certainly the brushes that are in there, they look fairly new. They're ones I replaced probably 35, 40 years ago when I last serviced this machine for the customer. I'm going to switch on and see what happens. So, there you go. That's, again, this is absolute gospel truth. That's been in my shed for 35 odd years. And lo and behold it goes. And that machine's got to be getting on for 90 years old, I would imagine, because it's 370 and pre-war. And it still goes strong. And that's another one that that lady gave me when she decided to move and buy a newer machine. Now I've got 2 other machines here, and as you can see, I've taken these to pieces. I've taken the bodies off. And I had a hell of a job to do it, I can tell you, but I'll come to that in a moment. But I'm going to show you this one first. When I took the brushes out of this particular machine, I found that they were worn down pretty badly, as you can see from the length of them. This is a new brush. This is what it should look like, and you can see the difference. Now, looking at the brushes, it probably won't be visible on the camera, so I'll have to explain it, but that one is lovely and shiny, and that one is all black and burnt and horrible, looks like charcoal. But because one brush is burnt and the other one's not, that just indicates that that one brush has been sticking in its holder. So if they were both clean and shiny, you would know the motor was alright, and if they were both burnt, you would know it's no good. But if one only is burnt, you've probably got a good chance. So I'll pop this brush in here, and we'll try this one and see what happens. It's really easy to change carbon brushes on this model, isn't it? You just undo the cap on the outside. What modern machine could you do that? Well, they wouldn't allow it now, would they? Access to the carbon brushes. But I mean, it's completely safe. But it is handy. It's much easier to check the condition of the motor. A modern machine, you're lucky if you can change the brushes, let alone get them out easily. Anyway, I'll pop those out of the way. So what I'm going to do, I'm now going to plug this one in and see what happens with this one. That's quite amazing. That's 3 out of 3 so far, and they've all worked. That's quite incredible, considering how long they've been left in that shed. And again, it's just a case of the carbon brushes. Now this is one that I've already taken apart. So what I'm going to do, I've connected it up. You're not really supposed to do this, by the way. Don't try this at home, folks, because you've got the fan exposed. I'm just going to tip this over like this and switch it on so you can see whether this one works or not. Now that one works, but you notice it is quite noisy. The reason is that the bearings are dry. To test the bearings on these, and most of these Hoover vacuum cleaners, what you have to do is, if you move the armature from side to side, like it's difficult like that. If you can move the armature from side to side, then that indicates a worn rear bearing at the back in the bottom behind the feeder coils. And if you can move the armature up and down, end play in other words, that usually indicates a worn ball bearing in the front. Now in this case, the rear bearing is fine, there's no play on it, and there's no up and down movement, but by turning it, it's rumbly, so I know that bearing is dry. Now that can be addressed quite simply. What you do, you have to have one of these to do it properly. It's an official Hoover grease gun, and you have a special nipple on there. That is actually the right one for doing this particular model, and with this it will actually force the grease into the bearing. Okay, so that's 4 out of 4, and I've actually already tested this one earlier and it does work fine as well. So 5 out of 5 basically, and they all work, and they're all in excess of 80 years old, which is quite remarkable. You'll notice on this particular one, it's got a rubber sleeve around the bottom here. That's because it's classed as double insulated. It only has a 2-core flex on it. Now the 370 will not be double insulated. It will almost certainly have a metal shield on the bottom of the handle, which means it does need an earth. So basically, if you've got a rubber sleeve there, it's normally a double insulated machine and you don't need an earth. If it's got a metal sleeve on there where it fits in, then it's earthed and it must have an earth cable on it. Now one interesting thing about this handle, well it's interesting to me, but then I'm a bit odd I suppose. If you look on this handle, I'm not sure if it's visible on the camera, but it is. If you look on the handle here, under this, there's 2 screws that hold it on. That screw there has got a blob of paint in it. And what that means is that was originally put in there in the factory 83 years ago. So it means that that hasn't been off, that switch cover hasn't been taken off for 83 years. So I'm going to take it off and have a look inside now. That means it's still got the original flex on the machine. Anyway, and if you notice, it's still got paint on the switch connections, look, where it's been painted in the factory stop and coming loose. That has never been off. That's been in there for 83 years. And this is interesting, if you note how the cord is held on there, the cord retention, it's tight in there because it's rubber, but it's tied on with a string using one of those little Hoover cord protectors, which I showed you in another video, I think. There's one on the end of here. I did this as demonstration how you tie it on, and it's a very simple design, a cord clamp that stops the cable from pulling through. But that's amazing that that's been on there for 83 years, look, untouched. And now I just spoilt it, but there you go. It's very rare to find one that's never had anything done to it. Incredible. Well, I think that's about enough for the first part of this video. In part 2 of the video, I'll show you what to do if the bolts and screws won't come out, and how to cope if they break off. So hopefully I'll see you again in part 2. Bye for now, folks.